If you're a veterinary practice owner who's been waiting to sell, waiting for that right time, this might be one of the most important messages you'll hear this year. Elizabeth Warren's new investigation into private equity could fundamentally change practice valuations, and we're not talking in your favor. Recently, Warren and Senator Blumenthal launched an aggressive investigation into JAB Holdings. Now, they're one of the largest private equity players in veterinary medicine. But really, here's what it means for you and your practice value. I'm Dr. Michael, founder of Transitions Elite, and today I'm going to explain why this investigation could signal the end of the golden era of veterinary practice valuations and why waiting to sell might be the most expensive decision you'll ever make. So let's look at the numbers that really matter to a practice owner right now. There are multiple private equity groups currently actively bidding on practices, and this competition has really driven valuations to all time highs. And we're seeing the highest multiples in veterinary history. The reality is simple: when there are multiple buyers that are competing for your practice, the seller, who in this case is the practice owner, wins. And right now, we're seeing practices receive 5 to 6 very competitive offers with more than a dozen active buyers that are really interested in a practice. And each one of these competitive offers is what is driving the value even higher. But Warren's investigation threatens to end this completely. So, what's going to happen? Well, if this investigation succeeds in pushing private equity firms out of veterinary medicine, or even just reduces their ability to participate, the impact on practice values would be immediate and really quite dramatic. Let's just think about it for a moment. What happens if you remove the biggest buyers from any market? Well, the prices drop, and they drop like a rock. And in this case, we're not talking about a small adjustment. So let's just be crystal clear about what's at stake in this situation. The current valuations are really at or near record highs, between 7 to 15 times EBITDA, with these financial buyers really driving these high multiples. Now, traditional valuations, pre private equity entering the market, would be about 3 to 5 times EBITDA. This means there's potentially millions left on the table if you wait to sell and something forces these financial buyers out of the market. So let's just take a little example. For a practice with 500,000 in EBITDA, the current valuation driven by these financial buyers at a 10x multiple would be $5 million. Now, traditionally, this practice would fetch 2 to 2.5. So the potential loss of waiting would be over $3 million for a multiple DVM practice owner. Now, let's talk about timing. Warren's investigation won't shut down private equity overnight, but it's likely to make private equity firms more cautious and immediately slow down the pace of these acquisitions. This is eventually going to lead to stricter regulations and potentially force some private equity groups that's exiting. So this window of opportunity, it's still open right now. In fact, it's open in a very major way, but we are seeing it start to close. Why and how are we seeing it? Private equity groups are now adding more deal terms. They're requiring the owners to stay on longer, and some are just slowing down their acquisitions. Fortunately, others are now picking up the pace, and we are still in this hyper competitive environment, especially for those best multi doctor practices. So, what should you do right now? Number one, is very important that you get your practice valued immediately. This will give you a sense as to what the current valuation is, what's the interest of buyers in your area, and should you wait or should you sell now? Because depending upon the situation of your practice, it's very important to know, and this will become one of the core strategic foundations of your practice when you think about the future. Next, when it comes to buying, whatever you do, do not sell alone because you want to drive the multiple conversations with multiple buyers, regardless of whether Elizabeth Warren's agenda gets put through or it is stopped. Next, accelerate your timeline or keep an eye on this legislation because this is probably the number one factor that's going to determine the future value of your practice. It's kind of shocking because in your mind, you're probably thinking, well, if I grow my practice, if I do this, this, and that, it's going to be able to optimize it. When in fact, the number one driver of your practice value could be what happens with this legislation, reducing the buyers and changing the entire market timing. So, timing in the market is going to be the number one factor. Next, when you're ready to sell, work with an advisor that's going to get your practice really prepared, looking at your practice through the eyes of a buyer. Because once you start due diligence and once you sign that LOI, the shot clock is on and you need to race to the finish line. If there are any delays, there are multiple scenarios that could halt the deal or, in fact, cause the deal to lose its value dramatically. As an example, let's say you're in due diligence and it drags on because you don't have the right paperwork or you don't have team contracts, and then suddenly this legislation goes through, the private equity buyer is forced out of the deal, and you're back at square one. And in fact, you don't even have the competitive environment that you had when you had started the deal process. But here's really the most important point. You do not have to sell, but you need to make this decision with full awareness of what's at stake. Because if you are waiting for no good reason, this literally could cost you as a practice owner millions. And as long as you're aware of that, then you're free, of course, to wait. But if you aren't, then this could be an accidental blunder that could be one of the most costly mistakes of your life. So the key takeaways are current valuations are at historic highs. The private equity competition is driving these valuations, and Elizabeth Warren's investigation threatens this dynamic. And if you wait, it creates significant financial risk. So it's very important, if you're even thinking about it, that now is the time to act. And so if you are a practice owner and you're interested in what your practice valuation is, we're offering a number of free practice value estimates. The link is in the description below. Click the link, you'll speak to me or our team. And really, I'd love to be able to help you figure out what your best timing is. You've worked too hard to be able to not maximize this at the very end. And our passion is helping you, the practice owner, not the buyers, not the private equity buyers, but in fact, it's you, and choosing who your best buyer is. If it is private equity, that's one thing. If it's not private equity, it can be to a different type of buyer. But regardless, the first thing that you need to do, and the thing that should be driving your strategic thinking, is what is my practice worth today? Are there buyers interested in my area? And what do I think this practice is going to be worth in the future? And will the deal terms get better in the future or worse? And we are seeing the earnouts, which is the obligation of you as the practice owner after the deal, extending significantly. It used to be 2 years, now it's 3 years, and I'm even seeing up to 4 years of these earnouts happening. So grab one of the free practice value estimates. We'll have a brief conversation, and you'll be in a much better place.